Hey, algebra students, welcome to today's lesson on 9.3. We're going to be talking about parent functions. Okay, so la lección de hoy tiene que ver con funciones que se llaman padres. So, parent functions. Okay, we're going to start with quadratics and vertex forms. So, vamos a empezar um, con los cuadrados que forman parábolas. Remember, they form parabolas. In vertex form, we're going to talk about two other functions. One of them is absolute value. Vamos a hablar de otras funciones. Una de ellas es valor absoluto and square root. Y también vamos a estudiar la función de raíz cuadrada. Okay, so just so you guys know, parent functions are equations of any function in its most basic form. Okay, so again, remember I said we're going to focus on parent functions. Today we're going to be talking about parabolas and quadratics. So, en este caso, como estamos hablando de parábolas, son parábolas en su ecuación más básica, which means that if it's in its basic form, the vertex is at the origin and there's nothing in the equation except for just x squared, okay? And I'll show you that in a little bit. So la ecuación de una ecuación cuadrada en su forma más básica, la ven aquí, van a ver aquí abajito. It's f of x equals x squared, okay? So it's the most simplest way to write the equation for a parabola. Okay, pero that's a parent function. So a parent function is the basic form, okay? So una función de padre o pariente es cuando está en su forma más básica. Then there's transformed functions, okay? Cuando una función se transforma, that means a couple things happen, okay? Cuando una función es transformada, it can be shifted. So the word shifted means moved, okay? Moved. You can move things left or right, up and down. So shifts, shifted. La palabra shift o shifted significa que algo lo han movido, okay? De izquierda a derecha o arriba a abajo. Another thing that can happen in a transformed function is that it could be reflected, okay? Reflected. Como un espejo, like in a mirror when something is reflected, okay? Un reflejo. And that can happen over the x-axis or the y-axis. So algo se puede reflejar sobre el x-axis o el y-axis. So remember, we're going to be looking at, if you remember the title, we're going to be looking at quadratics, parábolas, cuadrados, in vertex form. So in case you forgot, this is what vertex form looks like. Okay. It says vertex form de parábolas. Remember, we're going to be talking about other functions. Vamos a estudiar otras funciones, pero hoy vamos a enfocarnos en las cuadradas. Okay. So we've graphed these before, but we're going to be studying them in a different way. Okay, so ya hemos hecho gráficas de estas funciones cuadradas. We did that in chapter 8, pero las vamos a estudiar de otra forma. So one of the things I want you guys to know is that all of these letters pretty much mean something. Okay, we're going to focus on three letters. Nos vamos a enfocar en tres palabras. La A, which is the number in front of the parentheses, the letter A. If you ever see that that number is negative, that means that the function is actually flipped upside down, okay? So la parábola en vez de abrirse hacia arriba, va a abrirse hacia abajo. So the parabola, instead of opening up, it's going to open down. That means it's reflected over the x-axis. So cuando ven que el valor de A, el número enfrente de paréntesis, if the number in front of the parentheses is negative, that means that the parabola is reflected over the x-axis. So el valor de, o el x-axis es como un espejo. It's like a mirror. The x-axis is a mirror and the parabola is reflected over it. Okay, and then I also want you guys to notice horizontal shift is represented by the letter H. Okay, so la letra H representa hacia dónde se movió la función original, so the parent function. Okay, so H represents left and right shifts. Okay, so shift, remember, means to move. And then there's the vertical shift. and that's represented by the letter K. And if K, K, el valor de K representa cuando se mueve la parábola arriba o abajo. So we're going to focus on these three things, okay? So este año nos vamos a enfocar en estas tres cosas. Cuando una parábola, when a parabola is reflected over the x-axis, so cuando vean que una parábola se abre hacia abajo, significa que se reflejó sobre la línea de X. So if it's reflected over the x-axis, it's going to be opening down. Y vamos a usar el vertex, the vertex form. We're going to use the vertex from vertex form to decide which way it moved, hacia donde movieron la parábola. Izquierda, derecha, arriba, abajo, up, down, left, or right. Okay, so let's just quick reminder. This is an example of a parent function for a quadratic, okay? So una función en su forma más básica es esta, f of x equals x squared. So if you look down here, si ven aquí, mencioné que a parent function siempre se abre hacia arriba y tiene el vertex en 0, 0 cuando estás hablando de parábolas. Okay, so the vertex is always at 0, 0 and it opens up. So we're going to use 0, 0. Okay, as the vertex, that's the very middle value. Remember, the vertex is always the middle one. Then we're going to pick two smaller ones and two bigger ones. So remember, we've done this already. Ya hemos hecho esto anteriormente. So this is the parent function, una ecuación en su forma más básica. The most basic form is just x squared. So now I'm going to take each of these numbers and plug them in to the equation. Okay, so this is the basic form, right? So when I put each of these numbers into the parentheses, right, -2, -2 to the second power is positive 4, because negative times negative is positive. Then I'm going to go ahead and put -1. You really shouldn't need a calculator for this, guys. Negativo 1 por sí mismo es positivo 1. And then remember that in parabolas, these match, right? 2 cuadrado es 4, 1 cuadrado es 1, so estos números se repiten en una parábola. Okay, so now if I plot those points, -2, 4, -1, 1, 0, 0, you can see, right, I finished plotting the rest of them, that this is the parent function, parent, okay, like el original, la forma más básica, the most basic form. A transformed function is a function that was either reflected, que fue reflejada, o movida, or if it's reflected or has any kind of shifts. So here's how you can tell if it was transformed. You're always going to compare to the parent function, okay? So esta parábola, right? This parabola is, the vertex is no longer at 0, 0. So la original, remember, I'm going to draw it just so you guys could see it. The original one was at 0, 0 and it opened up, ¿verdad? El vertex estaba en 0, 0. That's the parent. The transformed function is the green one, okay? La función transformada es la que está en verde. So cositas que pueden notar, some things that you should be able to notice. It is definitely reflected over the x-axis because if you remember up here, we said that when it's flipped vertically, cuando algo se ve que está, cuando la parábola está boca abajo, when it's upside down, the parabola, that means it was reflected over the x-axis, okay? So you can see right here, reflection over x-axis. So fue reflejada sobre el valor o la línea de X. So here's the x-axis, x-axis. The parabola got reflected. I also see that the vertex moved, right? El vertex originalmente in the parent function is at 0, 0. But the vertex, the original vertex is 0, 0. The new vertex for the transformed function is at 2, -1. So how did the parabola move? Well, how do I go from 0, 0 to 2, -1? ¿Cómo voy a llegar de 0, 0 a 2, -1? I have to go right 2 units. Ese se llama shift. We call that a shift. We call that a horizontal shift. And you have to go down 1, right? From 0, 0, de 0, 0 para llegar a 2, -1, vas a ir 2 a la derecha y 1 para abajo. 2 to the right, 1 down. Okay, let me be more specific. So this is a horizontal shift, and this is a vertical shift. Okay, so if you look, we're going to take a look at a couple more examples, okay, without a graph. So remember the parent function is f of x equals x squared. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to look at 3 values. Van a haber 3 valores. El valor de a, so that's usually this is the value of a, is the number in front of the parentheses. You're going to look at the value of h, which is the one in the parentheses, el valor de h. And then you're going to look at the value after the parentheses, that's k. Okay. So para ver y comparar esta función, to compare this function to the parent function, those are the 3 values you're going to look at. Okay, so first things first, they're asking me, is it reflected over the x-axis? Well, if you look at the top, in order to be reflected over the x-axis, a has to be negative. Okay, so para ser reflejada sobre la línea de x, la a tiene que ser negativa. So here, you're going to say that it's not reflected over the x-axis. So this parabola is going to open up. The vertex, if you remember back to chapter 8, in capítulo 8, we would always change the sign of the one in the parentheses. So the vertex is 3, comma, y luego el último número no se cambia. You keep this the same. So that's the vertex. So I want you guys to imagine, okay? El vertex original in the parent function, the original vertex is at 0, 0. But this vertex is at 3, 4. So that's going to be, and it doesn't have to be perfect, guys, okay? You just got to imagine, se tienen que imaginar. Este punto está en cuadrante 1. To get there, you have to travel. So from 0, 0, you have to go 3 units to the right. That's a horizontal shift. So you're going to say right 3, 3 a la derecha, and then you're going to have to go up 4. Okay, now you don't really have to draw an x and y axis to figure this out. Okay, so unos de ustedes no es necesario que dibujen las, exactamente la gráfica. So it's up to you how you want to do it, but you don't have to draw a graph. I'm doing it to kind of help you guys understand. Okay, so next one. So remember, the parent function es la más simple. It doesn't have like parentheses or anything added or subtracted to it. It doesn't have any negatives. So that's what we're comparing, okay? So to compare the parent function to a transformed function, we're going to look at 3 values. The value of a, so in this case, it's -1, excuse me. Van a ver el valor de h y k. You're going to look for the values of h and k. Remember, h, you always change the sign. Se cambia el signo para el número que está dentro de paréntesis. This is something we talked about in chapter 8. Okay, so this time, because the negative is in front of the parentheses and that's the value of a, we're going to say, yes, this is reflected over the x-axis, which means that this one is going to open down compared to example 1. Since a was positive, it opened up. Okay, so the vertex is going to be -5, -8. What quadrant is -5, -8 in? ¿En qué cuadrante está el punto -5, -8? So again, if you want to, you can draw a quick little sketch. So to get to -5, -8, I would have to go 5 to the left from the origin, 5 para la izquierda y 8 para abajo. Okay? That's quadrant 4, or sorry, 3. Remember, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So el vertex va a estar en cuadrante 3. So instead of the vertex being at 0, 0 for the parent function, remember the parent function always has a vertex at 0, 0. This one, to get to the new vertex, we're going to have to go left. Tenemos que ir 5 a la izquierda and down 8. Okay? Okay, let's try a couple more. Okay, so this one is missing the parentheses. When they don't put parentheses, it's because there was a 0 that was added or subtracted, so it's not worth it. Cuando no ven paréntesis es porque el único número que estaba sumado o restado era 0, so no vale la pena ponerlo. Las paréntesis, so we're going to have 1 is our value of A, H is 0, and K. Okay, so since the value of A is positive, it is not reflected over the x-axis, which means it's going to open up like normal. El vertex, remember, since there was nothing added or subtracted to the x, we're going to use 0 for the x value and then 1 for the y value. So think about that. How is that different than the parent function? The parent function has a vertex that's 0, 0. This one is 0, 1. Where is the point 0, 1? ¿A dónde está el punto 0, 1? 0, 1 is on the y-axis. So to get there, I just have to go up 1. So 0, 1, 0, 1 is on the y-axis. So I don't need to go left or right. So para llegar al punto 0, 1, si empiezo en 0, 0, if I'm starting at 0, 0, I don't need to go left or right. But I am going to have to go up 1. Okay, next one. This one has parentheses, so I'm going to assume that there's a 1 in front of the parentheses. Remember, we're going to change the value of h. La h siempre se cambia. Got to change that, change the sign. And there's nothing added or subtracted at the end, so we're going to represent that with the number 0. No hay nada a mano derecha. There's nothing added or subtracted. So since A is positive, there's no reflection, which means this parabola opens up like the parent function. Remember, the parent function is the one that the vertex is at 0, 0. The vertex in the parent function is 0, 0, and it opens up. Okay? Okay, so what is the vertex for this one? It's going to be positive 6, 0. Positivo 6, because remember you changed the sign. It was a negative 6x, or sorry, x minus 6. It was a minus 6. We're going to change it to plus 6. And then that last number is 0. So say 0. All right, where is the point 6, 0? 6, 0 is on the x-axis. So to get there, I need to go to the right 6 and not go up or down. Okay, so simplemente ir caminar 6 a la derecha, no necesito subir o bajar. So I just need to go right 6, pero no subir o bajar. So there's no vertical shift. All right, guys, you have some homework to do. Tienen tarea para practicar. These first 3 examples, I didn't do any of these, but it's a review of some things that we've talked about already. So estos ejemplos, aunque no puse ningunos en el video, son como repaso de review of things we've talked about. Um, so do your best on these, and then these look like the ones in the video. Okay. All right, so main thing, guys, acuérdense que estamos hablando de parent functions. We're talking about parent functions and transformed functions. The parent function for quadratics opens up and is always has a vertex at 0, 0. So cuando ustedes están comparando transformed functions, you're always going to be looking at three values, los valores de A, H, y K. You're going to be looking at A, H, and K. Okay? All right, as always, if you want extra help, don't forget you can ask questions or come in. All right, have a good day. Adios.